Welcome to Comparative Anatomy of Vertebrates. Today, we are going to explore a fascinating topic, the types of mammalian uteri. We will discover how this incredible organ adapts its shape to meet the unique reproductive needs of different species, from mice to humans. By the end of this lesson, you will understand not just the anatomy, but the evolutionary story behind it. To begin our journey, imagine you are an architect tasked with building a specialized hotel for growing babies. If you usually have large groups of 10 guests arriving at once, you would want a hotel with long, separate hallways so everyone has their own private room. But if you usually only have one single VIP guest at a time, building one large, spacious master suite makes much more sense. In the animal kingdom, this biological hotel is the uterus. Its shape changes drastically depending on the reproductive needs of the mammal, allowing us to guess how many offspring it typically has. Now that we understand the purpose of these different shapes, let us look at how they actually form. The mammalian uterus is a hollow, highly muscular, and blood-rich organ. Embryologically, it develops from a pair of embryonic tubes called the Mullerian ducts. During early fetal development, these two separate left and right ducts migrate toward the center of the body and begin to fuse together. The physical extent to which these two ducts fuse determines the final anatomical shape of the adult uterus. If they do not fuse at all, we get two separate chambers, but complete fusion creates one unified chamber. This varying degree of embryonic fusion gives rise to four primary types of uteri, starting with the duplex uterus. In a duplex uterus, the Mullerian ducts do not fuse at all. This results in two completely separate uterine horns and two distinct cervices. Because the left and right sides are entirely independent, this anatomical setup is perfect for carrying large litters of offspring simultaneously without overcrowding. You will commonly see this type of uterus in animals that rely on rapid, high-volume reproduction, such as rodents and rabbits. Moving slightly along the spectrum of fusion, we find the bipartite uterus. Here, the two separate uterine horns share a single cervix, indicating that some fusion has occurred at the lower end. However, a prominent internal wall, known as a septum, still divides the lower body of the uterus. This structure provides a balance, allowing for multiple offspring while beginning to consolidate the reproductive tract. The bipartite uterus is typically seen in carnivores, such as cats and dogs, which usually give birth to medium-sized litters. Continuing our progression of fusion, the next type is the bicornuate uterus. This type is very similar to the bipartite uterus, but it features a much larger fused lower body and a significantly smaller septum. The two horns are still present, but the unified central chamber plays a larger role. This anatomy is highly typical for ungulates, which are hoofed mammals like pigs and cows. It represents an evolutionary middle ground, capable of supporting either a small litter or a single larger offspring, depending on the specific species. Finally, we reach the maximum degree of fusion with the simplex uterus. In this type, the embryonic Mullerian ducts have merged completely. There are no uterine horns at all. Instead, the uterus consists of a single, large, pear-shaped chamber with one cervix. This robust structure provides maximum structural support and blood supply for a single, relatively large developing fetus. It shows an evolutionary shift from prioritizing the quantity of offspring to prioritizing the protection and development of a single offspring. This is the standard anatomy for higher primates and humans. Having discussed all four types, let us look at them side by side in this diagram. On the far left, you see the duplex uterus, with its two completely separate horns and cervices. Next is the bipartite uterus, showing a shared cervix but a prominent septum dividing the base. Third is the bicornuate uterus, where the fused uterine body is larger and the septum is smaller. Finally, on the right, the simplex uterus shows a single, unified, pear-shaped body with no horns. Notice how the progression from left to right clearly illustrates the increasing degree of Mullerian duct fusion. Before we move on to the mathematics of this anatomy, let us understand why knowing these shapes is so critical in the real world. In fields like veterinary medicine and wildlife conservation, this knowledge is essential. For example, if a surgeon does not know a rabbit has a duplex uterus with two separate cervices, they might accidentally leave reproductive tissue behind during a spaying procedure, leading to severe health complications. Furthermore, the shape of the uterus directly impacts an animal's reproductive strategy, dictating litter size and survival rates, which is a cornerstone of evolutionary biology. To scientifically classify and compare these different uterine shapes, biologists use a mathematical formula called the uterine fusion index. This formula calculates the percentage of the reproductive tract that is fused into a single body. In this equation, F represents the uterine fusion index, expressed as a percentage. The variable L sub F stands for the length of the fused portion of the uterus, or the uterine body. The variable L sub U represents the length of the unfused portion, which are the separate horns. As the unfused length decreases, the fusion index increases, allowing us to objectively compare a whale's uterus to a mouse's uterus. Now that we have our formula, let us see this with a concrete example. A veterinary researcher is examining a female rabbit. She measures the fused uterine body and finds its length is 0 centimeters because the horns open into two completely separate cervices. The unfused horns measure 12 centimeters. We substitute 0 for L sub F and 12 for L sub U into our equation. The numerator is 0, and dividing 0 by 12 yields 0. Multiplying by 100 gives a final answer of 0%. This mathematically confirms the rabbit has a true duplex uterus, perfectly designed for large litters. Following our first calculation, let us apply the same formula to a completely different species. A medical student measures a human uterus and finds the fused uterine body is 7 centimeters long. Because there are no separate horns, the unfused length is exactly 0 centimeters. We plug 7 in for L sub F and 0 in for L sub U. The denominator simplifies to 7. Dividing 7 by 7 gives us exactly 1. Multiplying by 100 converts this to a final answer of 100%. This proves complete Mullerian duct fusion, characteristic of a simplex uterus designed for a single baby. We have covered a lot of ground today, so let us review the most important ideas. First, the mammalian uterus is highly adaptable, and its shape is dictated by the degree of embryonic Mullerian duct fusion. Second, we classify these into 4 main types: duplex, bipartite, bicornuate, and simplex, ranging from 0 fusion to complete fusion. Finally, we can quantify this anatomy using the uterine fusion index, which links physical structure directly to an animal's evolutionary history and typical litter size. You now have a solid understanding of how mammals have evolved to successfully reproduce across diverse environments. Great job!